Psychologists have revealed that it's normal to be interested in real-life horror stories. One of the reasons they give for why people are interested in these cases comes down to the fact that crime can affect any of us regardless of age, gender, or social status. So today, we will be recounting the tales of 3 horror houses that were burned down. Ed Gein. The terror in Ed Gein's house is not the result of the supernatural, but rather the result of Ed Gein. Edward Gein earned his nicknames the Butcher of Plainfield and the Plainfield Ghoul through a series of heinous acts and horrid attacks that took place in his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, USA. Gein had a poor childhood between his father being an avid drinker, being punished for making friends, and his mother pushing onto him her belief that all women were instruments of devil. His father and brother passed away in the 1940s, leaving Gein with just his mother. She suffered 2 strokes, the first of which paralyzed her, and so Gein assumed the role of carer. Her life was taken in 1945, following her second stroke, which devastated Ed. He described the loss of his mom as having lost his only friend and one true love. One late autumn morning in 1957, the owner of the local hardware store, Bernice Warden, disappeared. Her son, the deputy sheriff, entered the store at 5 p.m. and questions began pouring in. Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden found an open cash register and a blood-stained floor. An investigation launched into action and the police located the last receipt written, a gallon of antifreeze bought by a Mr. Edward Gein. In a shed on Gein's farmyard property, Warden was found inside. After this, officers were called in to further investigate the property, but nothing could prepare them for what they found. Upon searching the house, a disturbing list of artifacts were found, many of which echoed the messages instilled into him as a child, that women are instruments of the devil. When looking through his vile home, the police found various items, some of which included various objects that were made out of a human, taking the lives of Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden, but revealed that the other disturbing items in his home were acquired from 3 local graveyards, from 9 different graves. He said that between 1947 and 1952, he made nearly 40 trips during the night to take those that had recently passed away. He claimed that he was in a daze-like state when he was in the graveyards, and that on many occasions he left this state while still at the cemetery, and so left the individuals behind. He confessed that at other times he would try and find a woman that resembled his mother. He apparently wanted to become his mother and crawl into her skin. At his trial, Gein pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He was later diagnosed with schizophrenia and sent to a maximum security facility, now known as the Dodge Correctional Institution. Gein's house was burned down. This came 10 days before his belongings were due to be sold via auction, and at the height of rumors claiming his house could become a tourist hotspot. There was no official cause of the fire determined, though it was suspected to be arson, with somebody refusing to let Ed Gein's house become a tourist trap, with the possibility of it being monetized. Today, the impact of Gein's actions remain present in American pop culture, with novels, musicals, and films being made about him. Although his house was burned down, Edward Gein and his actions are not going to be forgotten anytime soon. Haunted Castle Six Flags Great Adventure. Many of us have enjoyed screaming our way through tourist attraction haunted houses at theme parks. Complete with live actors donning Dracula and Frankenstein's monster costumes, there was no question the Six Flags Great Adventure Haunted Castle was anything more than a run-of-the-mill tourist attraction, at least until it saw the loss of life of 8 teenagers in 1984. Opened a new attraction, a temporary haunted house. By the end of the season, the public seemed so thrilled with the new addition that management issued a more substantial version the following year, complete with a medieval castle makeover. Still designed to be temporary, the Haunted Castle ride was made of 17 aluminum trainers, 8 on either side with a central control room. A maze effect was created by connecting the trailers with plywood, and along with plastic monsters, heads, and other typical Halloween-themed props intended to be spooky and frightening. The Haunted Castle saw rapid success, becoming the second largest attraction in the park, at least until May 11, 1984. At 6:35 p.m., a fire began inside the ride. Between the flammable materials and the air conditioning pushing it further, the flames soon spread throughout. 29 guests were in the ride at the time of the fire. 14 people escaped, 4 of whom were park employees. 8 teenagers, part of one group of 9, lost their lives. The survivor from that group was carried to safety by a park employee. Their bodies were discovered later than expected, as the victims were first mistaken for prop mannequins in the attraction, due to the severity of their injuries. The cause of their passing away was ruled smoke inhalation and carbon monoxide poisoning. Due to the intended temporary nature of the building, it had never been fitted with fire and smoke detectors or sprinklers, despite repeated requests to do so by the theme park safety consultants. A young boy came forward a week later and said he had made friends with an older boy just outside of the castle. The older lad was familiar with the ride and offered to guide the witness through, though due to the dark nature, he held a cigarette lighter out in front of them. He apparently bumped into a foam wall with the lighter, spreading the fire. The attraction is understandably no longer at the park, and there now stands the Botanical Gardens instead. Bally Rectory has earned the title of the most haunted house in England, a title awarded by the psychic researcher Harry Price, though the legitimacy of this title has been debated. The Gothic-style rectory has had claims of being haunted since its construction back in 1892. The Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull moved into the house, which had been built on the site of a rectory that was destroyed in a fire 2 decades prior. Reports of the paranormal began flooding in from 1863, from unexplained footsteps to a sighting of a nun's ghost, various apparitions, and a coach being drawn by 2 headless horsemen. Claims like these continued to be reported for the following 40 years until Bull passed away in 1892. In 1927, when Bull's son passed away, Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife moved into the home. His wife, when cleaning, found a woman's skull in a brown paper package, tucked away in a cupboard. Following this, a series of strange occurrences were reported, including ringing bells, random lights in windows, unexplained footsteps, and a sighting of the horse-drawn carriage. Frightened by these incidents, the couple contacted the Daily Mirror, requesting that they be referred to the Society for Psychical Research. In 1929, a reporter was sent, as well as a paranormal, to investigate these strange happenings. Upon arrival, Price was met with new phenomena, including stones, barces, and other objects being thrown, all of which stopped when Price left. Smith's wife admitted she thought Price was behind these happenings. In 1929, the Smiths left and Reverend Lionel Algernon Foister, his wife Marianne, and their daughter Adelaide moved in 1930. Over a 5-year period, all paranormal happenings were noted by Foister and were sent to Price. This family experienced the bell ringing, stones and bottles being thrown, windows shattering, wall writing, and even Adelaide being locked in a room, despite it having no key. Adelaide was attacked and the Reverend conducted 2 exorcisms. The Daily Mirror gave Borley Rectory a great deal of publicity, enticing several psychic researchers to get involved, all of whom concluded that these events were caused by the Marian Foister, be that consciously or not. Later, Marianne did admit to an affair with a lodger, and that she used paranormal events to cover her tracks. She also confessed that she thought her husband was in cahoots with a researcher falsifying these stories. Following the Foisters leaving the rectory, Price gathered 48 official observers to report phenomena, all over which tarnished Price's reputation despite 2 spirits being found. Reportedly, a nun whose life was taken in the building that once stood where the rectory was, and one son Exmoor's, who threatened to set fire to the rectory at 9 p.m. that night, the 27th of March 1938. He claimed a poor deceased victim's bones would also be uncovered. On February 27, 1939, the new owner of the rectory, Captain W. H. Gregson, knocked over an oil lamp when unpacking boxes, sparking a fire and leaving severe damages. Gregson maintained that the fire was an accident, though the insurance company ruled the fire as deliberate. Price, in 1943, carried out a small dig in the cellar of the Borley Rectory ruins where a young woman's bones were found. Horror houses are unfortunately not confined to the big screen. There are plenty of spooky happenings all around the world, from horrible people to neglectful companies to the paranormal. What do you make of these scary houses and the stories they hold? Photographs can't always express the meaning behind them. Sometimes a story needs to be told with a photograph. So today we'll be taking a look at some interesting historical photos and what stories lie behind them. Marilyn Monroe and JFK on the 19th of May 1962. Marilyn Monroe was invited to a fundraiser and an early 45th birthday celebration of the president at the time, John F. Kennedy, although his actual birthday came 10 days later. This event took place a few months before Marilyn's passing at New York's Madison Square Garden. The birthday was broadcasted before a national audience and around 15,000 people had to pay for their seats to watch the event live at the Garden. Marilyn sang the popular birthday song to JFK in a sultry, intimate voice, which fueled the rumors of an affair between the then president and the pop culture icon at the time. The performance remains a cultural reference decades later and is also worthy of attention because the event produced what is considered the only photograph of Monroe and Kennedy together. The photo was kept secret by White House photographer Cecil Stoughton, who kept it hidden for decades and decided to release it in 2010. If the general public did not already believe that the Hollywood symbol and the president were secret lovers, Marilyn's luscious performance would make them the subject of intense speculation for years to come and lead to relentless reports filled with rumors of them being together, especially since Marilyn's passing would come just a few months later. It is not confirmed when Marilyn Monroe and President JFK first met, but there was a wide speculation that they had an affair during her third marriage. As two of the most photographed and documented eras of their time, there is barely a trace of JFK and Marilyn being in the same place at the same time as each other. Both were two of the most famous and probably the most attractive figures in the world at the time, and there were plenty of rumors of the president's extramarital affairs. According to most reports, there are only a few times throughout their lives that the Kennedy and Marilyn could have encountered one another. The first was at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel Paris Ball in April 1957. Though they were not formally introduced. Theorists speculated that JFK shared state secrets during their encounters and the staff threatened to go public with the information if the president did not publicly acknowledge his relationship with her. It was also speculated that Marilyn's passing was orchestrated by the Kennedys to remove the threat, although it's important to note that there is hardly any forensic evidence to support this claim. Those close to Marilyn admitted that there was something between JFK and Marilyn, but it was just a dalliance and nothing more than a one-night stand. Abraham Lincoln arrives at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg. The Battle of Gettysburg lasted over the course of 3 days from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the American Civil War, with over 51,000 casualties. The United States victory marked the turning point of the battle. On the 19th of November 1863, at the dedication of the military cemetery at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania during the American Civil Battle, President Abraham Lincoln delivered one of the most memorable speeches in the history of the United States of America. The Pennsylvania governor at the time charged an attorney named David Wills to care for those at Gettysburg that lost their lives. David Wills bought about 17 acres of pastures and turned it into a cemetery for more than 7,500 soldiers that fell in the battle. Wills invited Edward Everett, a former dean of Harvard University and one of the most famous orators of his day, to serve as the speaker and deliver a speech at the cemetery's dedication. Wills then sent a letter to Lincoln, just 2 weeks to the event, requesting for a few remarks to sanctify the grounds. Lincoln saw this as an opportunity to make a statement to the people of America on the tremendous significance of their efforts, and he prepared carefully. The crowd of about 15,000 listened to Edward Everett speak for 2 hours. Then Lincoln delivered his message, which took about 2 to 3 minutes. He began by invoking the image of the Founding Fathers and the new nation. He articulately expressed his belief that the civil battle was the ultimate test of whether the Union established in 1776 would either survive or perish. In fewer than 275 words, Lincoln connected the current struggle to the days of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, speaking on the basic principle that the nation was birthed in freedom and the belief that all men are created equal. In addition, he tied both the abolition of slavery and the maintenance of representative government. In the years to come, the speech Abraham Lincoln gave at the dedication would endure as arguably the most quoted and most memorized piece of oratory in the United States history. Despite the brevity and succinctness of the speech, since the speech was delivered, it has come to be regarded as one of the most powerful statements in the English language and in fact one of the most important expressions of freedom and liberty in any language. Edward Everett wrote to Lincoln that, "I wish I could flatter myself that I had come as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes." A priest praying over the victims of the Titanic. In April of 1912, the British luxury passenger liner Titanic sank during its maiden voyage en route to New York from Southampton, England, losing around 1,500 passengers and ship personnel. One of the most notable tragedies in modern history, it has inspired several stories, music, and movies, and has been the subject of much scholarship and scientific speculation. Titanic captivated the public's imagination. At the time, it was one of the largest and most opulent ships in the world. It was widely considered unsinkable due to a series of compartment doors that could be closed if the bow was breached. However, for days into its first journey, in 1912, the ship struck an iceberg and less than 3 hours later, it sank. 9 days after the ship had gone down in the Atlantic Ocean, the Titanic's victims gathered to be prayed over before they were buried at sea. The image, which was discovered in 1912, shows body bags stacked on the windswept deck, while 2 people who were said to be crewmen tipped up a stretcher to drop the victims over the side. The ship's priest, Reverend Hind, can be seen in white conducting the service in front of the solemn crew who were assembled days after the Titanic had sunk on its journey from Southampton to New York City. Although records stated that 166 of the 306 bodies retrieved by the Mackay-Bennett ship, the only ship that responded to Titanic's distress call, were buried at sea. No images of this event were seen by the general public until almost a century later. Most of the victims that were dropped into the Atlantic Ocean were believed to have been chosen because they had no means of identification or were third-class passengers and therefore could not afford a funeral. The Mackay-Bennett spent 5 days retrieving bodies of the victims from the wreck site and had to request for a second vessel to join it because there were so many bodies. The image has been owned by a family member of the crew that was on Mackay-Bennett. In the aftermath of this disastrous event, the ship Carpathia picked up more than 700 survivors from the lifeboats. The picture clearly blows away the myth that the Titanic burials were an orderly and dignified process. The bodies can be seen piled up on the deck, with some piled 3 or 4 high. In an account of the burials, Reverend Hind later wrote, "Anyone attending a burial at sea will surely lose the common impression of the awfulness of a grave in the mighty deep. But what do you make of these photos and why have they been kept so quiet?" Explorers, experts, and, on occasion, regular people make incredible discoveries every single day. Sometimes we don't hear about some of the ones that go under the radar discovered under ordinary circumstances by ordinary people. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 fascinating discoveries. New evidence about the Paracas skulls. The first skull we're discussing is the new evidence surrounding elongated Paracas skulls. These skulls were first discovered in the Paracas region of Peru, a desert on the south coast of the country. Julio Tello, a Peruvian archaeologist, was the first to discover these astonishing skulls in 1928. What initially stood out as the most unusual among the skulls was that they were the longest and most protracted skulls to have ever been seen before. Over 300 were found, dating back to between 2,000 and 300 years old. It wasn't until 2014 when preliminary DNA testing revealed unusual findings. It showed that they have mitochondrial DNA with strange mutations that has not been seen in animals or humans before. The elongated skulls were just the tip of the iceberg. While skulls may become elongated due to deformities or applying force on the skull for a long period of time, this was certainly not the case with the Paracas skulls. A researcher by the name of Lamazuli took note of more than a few characteristics that don't fit the norm for a standard human skull. The eye sockets were found to be much larger, the cheekbones were much more pronounced, and the skulls weighed 60% more than that of a normal human skull. He also looked to a specific point of the skull known as the foramen magnum. On a human skull, it's situated closer to the jawline, whereas it was closer to the back of the skull on the Paracas ones. After studying over 1,000 skulls, archaeologists also noted that the foramen magnum was smaller, leading to them to theorize that it's a genetic trait. This led to further research and discovery of the Paracas skulls, investigating every part. In great detail, experts eventually noticed that they were missing a sagittal suture, which is found on all human skulls and is a piece of tissue that connects the two parietal bones in the skull. Although not all Paracas skulls were devoid of a sagittal suture, most didn't appear to have one at all. This brought upon more confusion and intrigue to those involved in the research. As research continued, 3 skulls were used to sample DNA, one of which was an infant dating back 800 to 2,000 years ago. Hair and bone powder were extracted from the foramen magnum whilst wearing protective clothing to ensure the samples wouldn't be contaminated. The samples were sent to 3 different labs in Canada and the United States, and the geneticists weren't given many details to reduce the risk of creating preconceived notions about the skulls. The DNA results were nothing short of fascinating. They came back explaining that one of the samples found that the hair samples weren't a sequence found in human DNA. However, the other samples were showing they come mostly from Eastern Europe and some from Western Europe. When looking at the bone powder, they found that it originated from Mesopotamia, otherwise known as Syria. So what does this information mean than what we previously thought? It also points to the possibility that people from Europe and the Middle East made their way to the Americas a lot sooner than we had previously held true. It may still take many years before experts are able to provide an adequate explanation for the unusual findings among the Paracas skulls. So we'll have to draw our own conclusions for now. Who knows? Maybe this discovery will bring about more news and provide us with the insight needed to better understand the human race and our untraceable history. The Devil's Pool. Haunted. The Devil's Pool is one of the most haunted places in all of Australia. It's located just outside of Cairns in the state of Queensland and has been a popular tourist destination for some time now. The Devil's Pool can be found amid an untouched rainforest near large boulders in the town of Babinda. To those who are unaware of the Devil's Pool's dark history, they may find the crystal clear water and streams to be a majestic spot to enjoy and take in the natural beauty. Unfortunately, it has been deemed by the Australian Aborigines as a dark and dangerous place where only bad things happen. The Aboriginal legend explains that a beautiful woman that came from the Yidingji tribe was married to a tribal elder. At some point during their marriage, the woman fell in love with the younger man and they began an affair. They ran off into the woods to start a life that no one would find them. However, the tribal elder was in a powerful position in their tribe and he sent search parties to look for them. Eventually caught and surrounded by the Babinda boulders, the woman threw herself into the water below and took her own life. She couldn't bear a life without her true love and saw no other way out. The Aborigines don't believe she ever left those waters and still remains there. Looking for young men she can lure down below the water with her. What was first seen as a harmless legend or tale has gained some traction over time, due to the number of young men that have gone missing and mysteriously passed away at the Devil's Pool. All but one of the missing or deceased have been men. It's also believed that the pool is more aggressive towards men that disrespect the area. One young man kicked a sign that was placed to warn tourists and he slipped, falling into the pool and lost his life. While the number of deaths is still debated, there have been at least 17 young men that have gone mysteriously missing or lost their lives since 1959. But what does that mean? How could they have mysteriously lost their lives? For starters, onlookers have witnessed victims being pulled forcefully and held underwater. There have been other mysterious ways these men have lost their lives. A 24-year-old man named Peter McGann climbed up the boulder and jumped through a small gap into the water below. Police divers were only able to uncover his body after 5 weeks of searching through the murky water of the bottom of the pool. Another young couple was also taken by the Devil's Pool during a flash flood. The woman ended up surviving, but the man was never heard from after that. One of the most recent disappearances was a 37-year-old man, Mr. Hoffman, whose body was found in October 2020, 48 hours after he was last seen. The man was there with another young man who successfully escaped the pool unharmed. A strong current ran through and swept Hoffman away. With so many horrible incidents, the area has been boarded up with railings and large signs have been placed around the Devil's Pool to warn people from swimming or getting too close. So why do people continue to explore the Devil's Pool despite its large sum of disastrous events? Maybe some find the risk exciting. Scientists claim to have found the first known extraterrestrial protein in a meteorite. This year, researchers were happy to discover that we may have uncovered a vital clue that points towards life elsewhere in our solar system. By using new techniques in analysis and research, scientists believe that they could have found a type of extraterrestrial protein that was hidden in the middle of a meteorite that fell to Earth only 30 years ago. If the findings are accurate, then this would mean that it is the first ever protein that did not come from Earth to ever be discovered. Over the last number of years, researchers have come across a number of meteorites and other bits of space debris that have shown to hold elements and materials that belong to what we consider to be the fundamental building blocks of life. These materials include ribose, amino acids, as well as cyanide, and this specific discovery showed signs that the meteor held amino acids. The research team was led by the physicist Malcolm McGeographic, who works for the X-ray source supplier Plex Corporation, and they aimed their search in discovering vital life-building materials in meteorites. By using complex, modern examination techniques, the team discovered what they believed to be a protein string in the meteorite known as ACFA-086. The apparent discovery of protein within the meteor that was originally found in 1990, it is just one more part of the growing tapestry of evidence of life outside of our own planet. An astronomer and chemist of CSIRO, Astronomy and Space Science in Australia, who didn't work on the project, said, in general, they're taking a meteor that has been preserved by a museum and has been analyzed previously, and they are modifying the techniques that they're using in order to be able to detect amino acid inside of this meteor but in a higher signal ratio. To summarize the team's findings, the research results showed that the glycine amino acid found in the meteorite was bound to other elements like iron and lithium. What they ultimately found was that glycine wasn't isolated from the protein but was part of it. This new type of protein was dubbed protein hemolythin. While protein hemolythin is similar to proteins found on Earth, it's not exactly similar to anything found terrestrially here on Earth. All of this news and research helps to suggest that the structure the team found is actually a protein with an origin outside of Earth, possibly formed in the protosolar disk over 4.6 billion years ago. Every day, a vast range of events take place, some of which may be explained intellectually and others that are beyond human knowledge. Some of them go into greater depth about humans, their origins, intelligence, and history. Some of these can help us solve problems. The rest of the evidence, particularly the astronomical discoveries, just adds to the skepticism. So today we'll discuss 3 mysteries that have been solved. Authorities found a missing woman alive 7 days after her car plunged off a cliff. According to the Monterey County Sheriff's Department, Angela Hernandez, a 23-year-old Oregon lady, was discovered after her automobile was noticed across a cliff on Highway 1 around Big Sur, in which she made it out alive in the ruins of her vehicle. Angela Hernandez of Portland suffered a shoulder injury, but was capable of walking and speaking, according to John Thornburg, of the Monterey County Sheriff's Department. Angela Hernandez was last seen on July 6th while driving her white Jeep Patriot from Oregon to Southern California to see relatives. She texted a friend at approximately 10 p.m. on July 5th to say she seemed to be tired and had halted to rest in her vehicle in a supermarket parking lot in Half Moon Bay, San Mateo County, according to police statements. Around 8 a.m., she told her family on July 6th that she was going to keep driving. No additional messages were exchanged afterwards. All attempts to reach her by phone were unsuccessful. On Thursday, an H-70 helicopter was used by the California Highway Patrol to scan the Nacimiento-Ferguson Highway region, as well as the Big Sur seaside. Thick fog impeded the scan in Monterey County for days, making air searches exceedingly difficult. Detectives with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department were able to confirm that Hernandez ended up driving as far south as Carmel on July 6th, hours after texting that she was exiting Half Moon Bay, thanks to surveillance tapes from enterprises along Highway 1. Hernandez's previous resting place was in a supermarket parking lot behind a Safeway in Half Moon Bay. According to investigators, she contacted her sister on the morning of July 6, saying she had stayed there the night before and was heading back on the road. On Friday, Chelsea and Chad Moore went hiking when they came across a Jeep Patriot partially buried at the brink of a 200-foot hill. They collected evidence from the site and handed them over to the authorities and afterward tracked down the owner. Hernandez claimed she crashed when trying to evade crushing an animal, and authorities utilized climbing equipment to rescue her. Hernandez informed authorities that she stayed hydrated by siphoning water from a river with a radiator pipe of her car. Isabel, Angela's sibling, posted on Facebook on Saturday, "My sister is alive. She's speaking, but she's still trying to cope with it all. She's a survivor, and she's been fighting for a long time and will continue to do so. It won't be easy to get her back on track. Everybody should be patient with her as she recovers." Craig Williamson, who disappeared, was discovered with memory loss. Craig Williamson, a Wisconsin guy that went missing while out on a work trip in Colorado 2 years ago, is alive today and well in Key West, Florida. According to officials, Williamson is said to be a driver in Florida. After being violently attacked on August 30, 1993, at a pub or convenience shop in Colorado, he recently informed police that he lost his memory. Corresponds to a view advanced by his widow, Christine Reinhardt, who garnered global attention to her husband's abduction. Her statewide lookup for Williamson does include clip-on national TV programs and numerous media articles in multiple states. "I have no authority to speak on the subject. I'm stunned." Ms. Reinhardt, who relocated from Wisconsin to Cody, Wyoming, roughly a year ago just after the couple's fishery closed, stated, she explained, "We're trying hard to keep it a family matter till we can address some concerns because presently we're both very vulnerable. Craig's mental reaction is quite fragile." She furthermore defined her husband as experiencing an exceptionally incapacitated recollection and even being very suspicious or frightened, with whom she had spoken on the mobile device at least 2 or 3 times over the last week. El Paso County Sheriff's detectives are delighted to bring the case to an end after years and years of effort by state and federal investigators and a financial cost of approximately $12,000 since August 31, 1993. Williamson must have traveled to Colorado in late August in an old-fashioned bus intending to purchase fish from the fisheries around Alamosa. However, he vanished before he could even secure his cargo. The majority of Williamson's things were discovered in the lodge bedroom and at the bus station nearby. They investigated the case as a suspected assassination despite the lack of traces of resistance. Williamson's subsequent communications with Ms. Reinhardt, as well as his old girlfriend in Wisconsin, led detectives to the Florida harbor in which he had resided for the past 9 months. Authorities are not sure what happened to Williamson before he vanished. Williamson, on the other hand, reportedly told authorities how he was brutally injured and awoke in a hospital wearing a bracelet with the moniker Ron on it. He then spent 18 months in Key West, riding public transport aimlessly. Williamson's recall was questioned by the sheriff's captain, Lou Smith, who assisted with the inquiry. He said that shavings from Williamson's mustache were recovered in the discarded hire truck, which was clipped using blades from lab personnel. Smith speculated he was presumably altering his look. Williamson was carrying $2,500 in cash before he vanished, and he might have been fleeing an onerous responsibility from his new company. The duo had put all they possessed into the fish farm plus an additional $400,000. Smith claims that the answer can only be revealed if Williamson, who did not answer a journalist's call, reveals it. If only Williamson requests it, police will look into the charges of harassment. The universe's missing matter problem has finally been solved. Dark matter and dark energy make up many areas of the universe, with the latter making up around 95% of the known cosmos. We are aware that they exist, but we have never been successful in finding them. Galaxies hiding missing matter have now been discovered. It is the first identification of almost 50% of the ordinary matter in this universe, proton, neutron, and electron, which had previously been unaccounted for by measurements of stars and galaxies, as well as other brilliant bodies in the cosmos. Two different groups discovered the unknown matter, which is made up of materials called baryonic matter instead of just dark matter, and connects planets via strands of boiling, dense gases. One of the team's leads, Hideki Tanimura, of the Institute of Space Astrophysics in Orsay, France, declares the lost baryon issue is fixed. Anna de Graaf of the University of Edinburgh, United Kingdom, led to the other team. No one had ever been able to see it beforehand since the gas is so faint and not powerful enough for X-ray instruments to detect it. As a result, the two teams needed to come up with yet another means to prove that these gas strands are realistic. Both teams used the Sunyav-Zeldovich impact, which happens whenever light from the gravitational collapse flows across heated gas. Most of the energy bounces off the ions in the gases as it flows, forming a faint spot in the cosmic background radiation, our glimpse of the universe's earliest relics. Both groups chose clusters of galaxies from the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, which were thought to be linked by only a string of baryons. They piled the Planck signal for the regions surrounding galaxies, allowing them to see the particular feeble threads in bulk. Both groups discovered gas filaments connecting the cosmos. Tanimura's team discovered that they were 3 times denser than that of the universe's average for ordinary matter, and de Graaf's team discovered that they were 6 times denser, indicating that only the gases in these locations are dense enough to produce filaments. This makes a huge difference in proving that several of our theories about how the universe and structures emerge throughout the planet's history are mostly true. But what do you make of these solved mysteries? SpaceX has some big missions coming up in the near future, some of which include SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, which will launch a Dragon cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station. Another Falcon 9 lifting will place more Starlink satellites into orbit, and also the Crew Dragon spacecraft, which will launch its first all-civilian orbital mission, which has been given the name of Inspiration 4. Elon said the following: "You want to wake up in the morning and think the future is going to be great, and that's what being a space-frame civilization is all about. It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past. And I can't think of anything more exciting than going out there and being amongst the stars." End quote. The most recent announcement from SpaceX, though, hasn't been well received. It's been reported that the space agency will be placing a large advertising satellite in the sky, saying that various companies can contact them and have their products placed in the sky. News outlets reported that the space agency is currently working with a new startup company in Canada called the Geometric Energy Corporation, revealing that this will be launched on a Falcon 9 rocket, saying that it will release the advertising platform before the rocket reaches the moon. Samuel Reed, who is the CEO and co-founder of GUC, told reporters that this satellite could be launched as early as 2022, going on to say that companies could buy spaces on these boards which would show their products on their screens. He continued with the following: "Hopefully people don't waste their money on something inappropriate, insulting, or offensive. There might be companies which want to depict their logo, or it might end up being a bit more personal and artistic. Maybe Coca-Cola and Pepsi will fight over their logo and reclaim over each other." End quote. As of right now, it's unclear how this space advertising is going to work and how these ads will be shown so they'll be seen by people. Interestingly, there are laws that state that advertising can't be obstructive in the night sky. But as some have stated, this all depends on the definition of obstructive. Furvis saying that some of these laws are listed by certain countries, and that none of these countries own the cosmos. So some have said it's likely that advertisers might get away with this if the companies can walk out a way to place their products in space. Although, as of right now, Some articles are claiming that these advertisements won't be visible from the ground, and that they won't affect our day-to-day lives. Many people have been very outspoken about these kinds of missions and also things such as space tourism, saying that companies should not be charging hundreds of thousands of dollars to take people into outer space, noting that this kind of money that's currently being spent on these missions could be better spent on planet Earth. When it comes to these kinds of discussions, you get two kinds of people. There's some that will say that we as a species need to head into the stars and explore the space around us, saying that this will help humans in the long run if we can establish bases on nearby celestial bodies such as the Moon and Mars. Studies have revealed that it's unlikely that humans are the only advanced life forms in the universe. Elon said the following about this. This is why we must preserve the light of consciousness by becoming a spacefaring civilization and expanding life to other planets. It's unknown whether we are the only civilization currently alive in the observable universe, but we should take any chance that we can get to help us extend life beyond Earth. Those against heading into space have said that the hundreds of billions that it costs on space missions could be spent on those who need it, could help rebuild societies, and could also give everyone a universal income, which will overall help with many people and remove a lot of the stresses that people have about everyday life. Both of these benefit humans. Heading into space, learning about planets, exoplanets, moons and galaxies around us will help us to better understand our place in the universe. It'll also help us to offload people onto another planet if our one can't hold the increased population. There's currently 7.6 billion people on Earth, and within just 100 years, that number is said to jump up to 11.5 billion people. However, spending money right now could help us in the short term. Although many officials have pointed out that throwing money at some of the world's problems won't actually fix them. It would only help them in the short term until the money ran out. One of the most recent announcements in regards to space tourism has come from Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic space planes, with them revealing that if you want to be taken 50 miles above planet Earth, a seat will cost in the region of $450,000. The company revealed, though, that people are buying them and that they are resuming sales of tickets, stating that those who have a seat on one of their planes will experience 4 minutes of freefall. We'll get to look out into the darkness of space. As of right now, some of the biggest space agencies are working hard to be the first to put humans on the red planet, with SpaceX and Elon Musk revealing that they're confident that the first crew missions to Mars will happen in 2026. NASA has even said that robots will likely be sent to Mars first, and they will start to prepare underground bases for humans before they get there. So what do you make of these recent announcements? And do you think that space tourism is a good idea? This mysterious satellite photograph has caught the attention of many. The photographs were captured by a Google satellite and were taken on an island in the Pacific Ocean. What's particularly interesting about this is that the island is far away from any human civilizations. The abandoned and isolated island doesn't have anyone nearby, so people are wondering what this strange object is. The alleged crash site caught the attention of many amateur researchers, who went on to say that this could possibly be an unidentified flying object, and said that you can even see skid marks behind it. As mentioned, the island is pretty much in the central Pacific. It's surrounded by nothing but the ocean. Users have said that if it's something like a ship or a piece of plastic, how has it managed to leave skid marks hundreds of feet in length across the whole island? Others carried on from this and said the object in question is around 40 to 50 feet in diameter and must be heavy or crashed, as it was able to leave deep skid marks in the ground on the island, saying that it can't just be on the surface, as satellites were able to detect this thing from space. For years now, believers have said that there's certain locations where these tubs of discoveries have been made, and that when first looking at them they do appear to be in the shape of a UFO, noting that many of these can allegedly be found in places like Antarctica, and they too leave behind these strange skid marks. This discovery also reminded some of the Baltic Sea anomaly, which is an alleged craft that crashed into the Baltic Sea, and that has the overall appearance of a spaceship, with those that discovered it saying that when you go over the top of the anomaly, it interferes with electronic devices. Not everyone is convinced, though. This person said the following. It's hard to know how much of the island is elevated and whether something man-made would be able to travel across the island. What I will say is that it's not uncommon to see man-made things washed up on an island out in the middle of nowhere. If I had to guess, I'd say this is part of a ship that washed up on the island. And due to winds and perhaps slight erosion of the island, it was able to travel across and leave this skid mark. End quote. Regardless of the origins of this object, it still creates an interesting discussion, and that's where do these strange crafts come from? Since the first reports of flying saucers were made over the past few centuries, many people have given their opinions on what they think they are and where they come from. Over the past few decades, after an endless amount of gathered reports have been made, there have been a few widely accepted theories surrounding the origin of the flying saucers and their primary reason for visiting humanity. One interesting comment that keeps coming up is that either way you look at it, humans are being lied to. Those who have looked into and studied these crafts have said that officials say they're not real, but if that's the case, it means that they belong to us. And if they belong to us, it means that humans have crafts that are able to travel tens of thousands of miles per hour, and that we're being lied to on a daily basis about the kinds of craft we have at our disposal. So either way you look at it, whether they belong to us or not, we are still being kept in the dark about these mysterious flying objects. Believers have said that unless 99% of us are being kept in the dark, it's unlikely that these things belong to us. And that the more accepted explanation is that these crafts are either visiting us from outer space or they live within our oceans. A theory that's currently getting more acceptance after officials have come forward and said that many of these crafts have been observed coming from our oceans. Regardless of where you sit on the spectrum, it's no secret that some of these reported crafts are real and that they are able to do things that we can't explain. Military officials have said that these crafts are often tracked by gens and other pieces of military tank, and that very rarely are they able to catch up to them. And when they do chase them, they've reported that they can fly at incredibly fast speeds, where in some cases they've been observed splitting off into various different pools of lines, then flying off into different directions. It's testimonies like this that cause some to say that we have no idea what these things are, and that we can't begin to understand how they're created and where they come from. Pilots have often detailed their encounters with these mysterious crafts and have said that sometimes they don't even bother reporting what they see, as they'll often be judged and could even be demoted from their current position. It's an interesting time in regards to these mysterious flying crafts, as many have pointed out that even officials are starting to discuss them, where they're coming from. Although some believers are happy of how the topic is being brought into the mainstream media, they've still said that there's a lot of classified documents that the public doesn't know about, and that some of these need to be released to the general public so that we can start moving forward. So what do you make of this alleged crash site? Do you think it's a downed, unidentified flying object? Or could this be something man-made like a piece of a shim? Sometimes the most interesting discoveries hide just out of sight. To uncover the secrets and find out what is lurking, we have to dig, crawl, and climb to stumble across these groundbreaking revelations. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 discoveries that were made when we peered under surface level. Incredible pool untouched by humans discovered in the depths of a cave 700 feet below the ground. A discovery made as recently as 2020 with research being conducted throughout late 2019 comes with the announcement that a pool has been uncovered within a cave underneath Carlsbad Caverns National Park in New Mexico. What has been dubbed a wondrous pool is thought to be untouched by humans. It has a pale blue liquid with a milky consistency and a somewhat squidgy appearing texture to be surrounding surfaces, not unlike a scene from a sci-fi movie. The Kansas City Star replaces these admittedly juvenile descriptions with a more accurate name of white frosted rock surrounding the aquamarine liquid. Rodney Horrocks, the Chief of Natural and Cultural Resources at the Carlsbad Caverns National Park, offered the explanation. This pool has been isolated for hundreds of thousands of years and had never seen light before that day. The lack of human contact and interaction could prove to be a valuable asset to the discovery. Lexus Cave, at a whopping 150.4 miles, is the 8th longest cave in the world that we have been able to explore, and with a depth of 1,604 feet, it is the 2nd deepest tomb. The largest scale of these cave networks is not unknown. In 1993, the caves were uncovered. though explorers and researchers only ventured in for the very first time in October, entering through tunnels known as virgin passages indicative of their lack of use. Max Wysiak, the geoscientist who led the expedition, posted on Facebook following the breakthrough that exploration in caves sometimes yields wondrous sights, and looking at this strange pool discovery, it is rather difficult to dispute. Wysiak elaborates by explaining that the conditions of the pool in the Lexus cave are untampered with or, as he stated, completely pristine, meaning that the bacteria growth and microorganisms could be entirely unique to this cave and never seen before by humans. Wysiak describes the edges of the pool to have pool fingers, which could house the possible bacteria colonies that have grown without the impact of humans. The pool lays at a huge 700 feet below surface level and required 1.3 miles of passages to be mapped out prior to the mission. The dangerous trek involved rope drops and other rather daring maneuvers. The pool is approximately a foot in width, 2 feet in length and several inches deep, and despite the milky, cloudy hue in photograph, researchers commented that, in person, it appears to be entirely clear. The mystery liquid is ancient filtered rainwater that has been dripped through from the cave's limestone. At this time, the possibility of the aforementioned bacteria colonies are the only indicators of current life, though bat skeletons predicted to be thousands of years old have also been found. The nature of untouched pools makes them of great scientific significance. Largely speaking, the water samples are mostly free of contaminants. There is the possibility that contamination could come from the surface of the cave and drip into the cave from above, but the well-protected wilderness of the national park prevents any major issues from arising here. Alongside the untouched aquamarine pool, other pools have been revealed to be hiding within the cave network, and the largest has earned the nickname Lake of Liquid Sky. The scientific value this discovery holds outweighs the excitement found upon immediate discovery. This pool represents a large new avenue of scientific research in the Lexus cave. 3,000-year-old shark attack victim found by Oxford scientists. I am sure we have all heard of a shark attack story in the headlines at one time or another, but the unveiling of a 3,000-year-old victim and the event being outlined in scientific journals is certainly a little rarer, almost unheard of. Skeletal remains were found with the cause of death being a shark attack in the Seto Inland Sea of the Japanese archipelago. According to scientists in the Journal of Archaeological Science, these remains could represent the earliest shark attack on a human. Using a mixture of forensic and archaeological practices, researchers are aiming to piece together the details of the event over 3,000 years later. Researchers with Oxford University, J. Alyssa White and Professor Rick Schulting stumbled across the remains while looking for evidence for environment trauma on the remains of hunter-gatherers, whilst working alongside Kyoto University. The believed shark attack victim, dubbed number 24, has been confirmed to be an adult male with traumatic injuries, specifically 790. Number 24 was retrieved from the already excavated Tsukumo site. The Oxford researchers made a statement saying, "We were initially flummoxed by what could have caused at least 790 deep serrated injuries to this man. Were so many injuries, and yet he was buried in the community burial ground, the Tsukumo Shell Mound Cemetery site." The pair continued to elaborate on their research, explaining that the injuries were largely limited to the arms, legs, abdomen, and the front of his chest. This allowed them to begin eliminating unlikely possibilities, such as human conflict or certain animals, allowing the pair to focus their energy, research, theories, and time towards a less common predator-based speculation. It is relatively rare for a shark attack to be considered an archaeological case, so the duo took to forensic files of shark attack reports, looking for similarities and clues that could fill in potential details of the event. The Oxford pair worked with George Burgess, Director Emeritus of the Florida Program for Shark Research, and successfully created a sequence of events that could have happened to number 24. This international collaboration found that number 24 lost his life over 3,000 years ago, placing his passing between 1370 and 1010 BC. Due to the spread of wounds over the body, professionals believe the victim was alive at the time, a theory largely evidenced by his left hand being missing, which researchers have suggested could be a defense wound. Number 24 was found in the cemetery, and the timeline presented from the professionals that his body was recovered fairly quickly. The records from the cemetery's excavation noted that he was also missing his right leg, and that his left had simply been placed above him in an inverted position. The spread of the injuries, combined with the tooth marks, lead the scientists to make a confident confirmation that he was the victim of a shark attack, most likely a tiger or great white shark. They do say that due to the quick recovery time, it is a true possibility that he was fishing and had company at the time of the accident. The co-author of the paper, Dr. Mark Hudson from the Max Planck Institute, said that the reconstruction of an event like this demonstrates the skill and abilities of archaeologists, as well as giving a great insight into the marine practices of the Neolithic people of Jaman, Japan. Who would have thought a death from over 3,000 years ago would hold such a significant point in archaeological research today? A previously unknown type of archaic human discovered in Israel. As of June 2021, a new species of human previously unheard of was found in the middle of a sinkhole in the center of Israel. Apostles have been discovered in a sinkhole near the city of Ramla. This area is known for prehistoric humans hunting animals, including horses and deer, leaving behind the telltale signs of their work, including stone tools and animal bones. Among the fossils that were discovered, there is part of a skull and a jaw. These fragments have been dated between 140,000 and 120,000 years ago, placing them in an era just overlapping with the Neanderthals, with some suggesting this newly discovered prehistoric human species could be the ancestors to Neanderthals. Rachel Serig from Tel Aviv University has linked these fossils to those found in Israel's Kesem Zutia and Tabin caves, explaining that these discoveries could all be connected to these new prehistoric humans. This new human species has earned the name Nesharamla homotype. Haila May, also of Tel Aviv University, explains that the Nesharamla homotype could be associated with the Neanderthals, also having been migrants throughout Europe, breeding with other groups of humans as the population traveled across the continent. Nesharamla people are estimated to have moved through India and China, as well as European areas and Israel in which these fossils have been found. Israel Hershkowitz offered the statement, "Some fossils found in East Asia manifest Neanderthal-like features as the Nesharamla do." Yossi Zeidner from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem adds that the tools discovered from the same period mirror the expectations of modern humans 120,000 years ago. Paleolithic stone tools found appear to help place these prehistoric Nesharamla humans into a cultural and sociological position on an ever-changing timeline. There is still a lot more research to be done than these initial discoveries, from dating of more fossils, tools, and bones, to looking at the makeup and how advanced certain tools are and how accurate the craftsmanship is. The possibility of these new prehistoric humans is only the beginning of research to come. From fossils to pools to shark victims, there certainly is a broad range of discoveries to be made just below the surface. What else will we find if we dig a little deeper? But what do you make of these three interesting discoveries? The Apollo missions will forever go down in history. Back in November of 1969, NASA launched the Apollo 12 lunar mission. The mission was a success, and the United States Space Agency was able to land a man on the moon for a second time, proving to everyone that NASA was quickly becoming the go-to agency when it came to space exploration. As stated on the NASA website, the primary mission objectives of the second crewed lunar landing included an extensive series of lunar exploration tasked by the Lunar Module, or LM crew, as well as the deployment of the Apollo Lunar Surface Experiments Package, or ALSEMP, which was meant to be left on the moon's surface to gather seismic, scientific, and engineering data throughout a long period of time. While on the moon, many photographs were taken and sent back to NASA, but as the space agency mentioned before, not all of these have been seen by human eyes. And because of this, amateur researchers have taken it upon themselves to scan through them in the hopes that they might find something mysterious lurking in the background. Although most of the images contain nothing of interest, every so often someone will find an anomaly that can't always be explained. One photograph taken during this mission is this one. But when you zoom in, you can clearly see that there's something odd hovering in the background. Those who've seen the image have said that it looks like a UFO, and that it appears to be in the shape of a disc, matching the older style of UFOs that were captured during the 1930s and 1940s. What's interesting about this photograph is that some who've studied mysterious flying objects have detailed that this is how they fly, noting that many of these UFOs that have been tracked by militaries across the world state that they fly at this angle. As with many of these photographs, online users have said that these mysterious objects can be found throughout NASA's library, and that they don't give an answer of what it is they captured. Oddly enough, one user even stated that this photograph sometimes doesn't appear on the official NASA website, with them saying that when they've tried to access the page it doesn't open. Although as of right now the page is loading and the same anomaly can be seen in the background. Others went down a different route and suggested that it might have been something like a high-tech drone, noting that astronauts and NASA employees have said that their instruments and equipment were buzzed by mysterious crafts on the moon. Interestingly, these comments didn't come from random people. They came from those that have actually experienced them being to space, giving photographs like these more credibility. One idea was that this could be the mysterious Black Knight satellite. The Blacklight satellite is said to be a strange satellite that was placed above our planet in order to spy on the human race. Scientists have said there's around 3,000 human-made satellites in orbit around the Earth. After the Soviet Union launched the very first artificial satellite into orbit in 1957, various countries around the world have sought to compete, and satellites today are used for communication, navigation, and exploration. The Black Knight satellite, though, is said to be different, and was allegedly placed there in order to spawn human activities. Those who have researched it have said the satellite must be one of the oldest ones currently orbiting our planet, and that it wasn't placed there by humans. This idea then suggests that the satellite is much older than any human civilization, causing some to speculate that it could be thousands of years old. Theorists have said that the ancient object is transmitting signals deep into space. This mysterious satellite has been featured in the media since the 1950s, and it has become one of the most talked about objects in space. One of the first people to allegedly pick up on the object was that of Nikola Tesla, a Serbian-American inventor. Those who have been looking for signs of extraterrestrial life report that this satellite is one of the best pieces of evidence that we have so far. As of today, even scientists are opening up to the idea of advanced civilizations, with them saying that there's millions of galaxies spread throughout the universe, and in each one of these there's hundreds of billions of planets which could be teeming with life. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that one of these civilizations could have sent a satellite into the cosmos. After all, the human race has sent many different messages out into space. Officially, scientists have said that we've never had a reply, but others who believe in the UFO phenomena have said that we've already been visited and that some of these events can't be explained using everyday explanations. It's important to note that researchers and scientists have said that Black Cloak satellite is not real and that what people are seeing is just pieces of space junk. The space above our planet is littered with old satellite materials, with some researchers saying that space debris that's high in altitude will stay in orbit the longest, with low-orbit objects dropping back to the Earth within several years. One user said the following about the image: it definitely looks like it's hovering just above the moon, although the perspective could be off, and it could actually be higher than it looks in the photograph. It is strange though, and it does look like it's observing them from a distance. It makes you wonder what these strange objects could be. How much longer do we keep saying that these are space debris? Surely there has to come a point when we become more open-minded and actually start looking at alternative theories. I don't think it will happen anytime soon, but I think we should at least look at other possibilities." End quote. So what do you make of this mysterious photograph? Do you think it shows an unidentified flying object? Or is it just a piece of space debris? Technology and science are always evolving and improving. This offers up an entirely new exploration route, not just for the foreseeable future or current and prospective means of enhancing our huge knowledge and comprehension of the universe, but rather for earlier discoveries. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 strange discoveries. 3-year-old lost in the woods says a bear watched over him. Casey Hathaway, a 3-year-old lad who had walked away from his grandmother's property and mysteriously disappeared for 2 days, was discovered unharmed in the forests of eastern North Carolina after a bear kept an eye on him. According to authorities, Casey Hathaway weighs approximately 25 pounds and stands 2 foot 4 inches tall. Prior to his disappearance, he was playing with 2 other children in his grandmother's yard in Ernle, North Carolina. Before phoning 911, his family looked for him for 45 minutes. Nothing was known about the young boy's comings and goings, as a minute eventually turned into hours and hours later turned into days. A desperate search for little Casey was ongoing in Craven County, North Carolina. Through sniffing through all the icy trees and bushes, police dogs were able to assist in the search. Casey's family attempted to contact God and open their minds up to the very worst scenario. Adverse weather conditions well below 0 degrees spurred a search that included helicopters, drones, canine units, divers, and scores of volunteers, as well as fears that Casey was not suited for the cold. The FBI, NCIS, Craven County Emergency Management, and the United States Marine Corps were all involved in the search for the youngster. The wind and rain had become so terrible that law enforcement agencies advised volunteers to please stay away. A few days later, though, Casey was discovered, repeatedly calling for his mother approximately a couple of miles away, 40 to 50 yards deep in the forest. He was already drenched, freezing, and entangled in thorn bushes. How did he get in there, and how did he manage to survive? Nobody knows what Casey was up to throughout his 3-day disappearance, and we may never really find out. Hughes said on Friday that the boy is a survivor, pointing out that searchers had to wade through waist-high water to reach him. Casey survived with only a few scratches and stated that all he needed was just some water and his mother. Casey, however, was taken to a nearby medical facility where he could restore some of his energy and return to his parents. Casey revealed something quite extraordinary to his mother in the medical facility, saying that a bear cared for him when he was stranded in the forest. His aunt said that he hung out with a bear for 2 days. God had sent him a companion to keep him alive, and that God is indeed a good God. Casey's account of the bear has made international news since that day, with several disputing if such a thing actually happened. Some scoffed at the story, claiming it to be a work of fiction. But Chris Norkett, a wildlife photographer who spends more time with black bears in North, as he had heard similar stories before. According to the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, the black bear is the only breed of bear present in North Carolina, and there were roughly 17,000 of them in the state in 2012. Berries, nuts, and small animals are among its favorite foods, and they rarely assault humans. Amanda Ella was found 2 weeks after disappearing in a forest on Maui. According to her relatives and a media page dedicated to the search, a 35-year-old physiotherapist and yoga teacher who mysteriously disappeared several weeks ago in Makawao Forest Reserve on Maui, Hawaii, has been rescued safely. 3 volunteers frantically searching the forest reserved by chopper discovered Amanda Ella close to a dry riverbed between 2 waterfalls. According to the Maui News, but no further details were given. Pictures on the search's media page portrayed her with severely wounded and swollen feet, as well as being dirty. "Guys, we achieved it. We located her," said Javier Cantalopes, who had been part of a circle of family and friends who spent most of the past days looking for her. Cantalopes, a veteran Special Operations Airborne Ranger with the 3rd Ranger Battalion of the 75th Ranger Regiment, claimed he and other rescuers Chris Berquist and Troy Helmers have been combing a region far east of previous search missions before they noticed Ella inside a dry riverbed between 2 waterfalls. The place was far east of the Bamboo Forest and Commando Trail, according to Cantalopes. Berquist, who was in the chopper, said, "She was waving up at us while we were in the aircraft, so he brought her out safe and sound. Ella seems to be in the same astonishingly good form we know her to always be in," members of the family stated on Friday night, taking into consideration the fact that she was last seen 17 days ago. According to the medical report, she had no fractured bones and was quite conscious and extremely cognizant, despite minor scrapes and considerable exposure to the sun. During a press conference with Maui 24/7, Amanda's dad John Eller told reporters they discovered her in a deep creek bed, "Obviously totally incapable to get out as I comprehend it. I believe she had a terrific fall. ABC News reported that Amanda had been surviving on river water and vegetables during the days she spent in the riverbed. It was reported that Ella got trapped in the Makawao Forest Reserve on May 8th after heading to a local post office. Somewhere at the bottom of the Kahakapwa Trail, Ella's vehicle was discovered. Ella's family made a $50,000 offer to anybody with relevant knowledge about what they suspected was a kidnapping just hours before she was discovered by the three rescuers. David Barclay Miller's disappearance around May 19, 1998. David Barclay Miller, a 22-year-old hiker, was last seen departing on a 2.5-day hike in Sedona, Arizona. At the time of his disappearance, Mr. Miller was an excellent hiker and a regular staff member with the U.S. Forestry Service. On May 19th, colleagues noticed him somewhere at Beaver Creek Ranger Station, where he said that he intended to go for a hike in the Red Rock Secret Mountain Wilderness area. Miller did not come back from his expedition, and he has never been seen since. At the Volte Arch Trail in Sedona, Arizona, David's car was discovered abandoned. Before his disappearance, he was 5 feet 11 inches and weighed 160 pounds, dressed in what seemed like a t-shirt, shorts, and black hiking boots, and carried a forest green Gregory bag. He wore spectacles or contact lenses and had sandy blonde hair with blue or gray eyes. Many search teams were dispatched to the Red Rock Secret Mountain Wilderness area in the hopes of finding him. Friends and families have organized a series of search parties. Several sums of money were offered to anyone who could provide concrete information on his whereabouts, but none of them were successful. After several months, the search for David was called off. It has now been 12 years and there's been no trace of him. But what do you make of these stories? The goal of many space agencies at the moment is to explore the Martian surface and identify if there's any life currently on or underneath the planet's surface. Ferris Mars rovers have made discoveries that have helped us to better understand the Martian terrain, weather, and overall environment. These rovers even have onboard laboratories, meaning they can conduct a variety of different experiments while on the red planet. NASA said the following on their website. The Mars 2020 Perseverance rover mission is part of NASA's Mars Exploration Program, a long-term effort of robotic exploration on the red planet. The mission addresses high-priority science goals for Mars exploration, including key questions about the potential for life on Mars. Perseverance takes the next step by not only seeking signs of habitable conditions on Mars, but also searching for signs of past microbial life itself. The rover introduces a drill that can collect core samples of the most promising rocks and soils and set them aside in a cache on the surface of Mars. A future mission could potentially return these samples to Earth. That would help scientists study these samples in laboratories, with special room-size equipment that would be too large to take to Mars. End quote. Ever since the Perseverance rover was launched, though, various online users have reported seeing mysterious artifacts on the surface, with one of the most recent ones being this one. It was shared to online groups that investigate strange artifacts on the Martian surface, and those who saw the image agreed that it looks like mold or mushrooms growing on the rock. Some users said that the fungus grew on the Martian surface within a few days, and said that they don't look like pieces of rock. Others carried on from this and said that for years NASA has been capturing life on Mars, but has failed to further examine these photographs. Dr. Regina Das of the Department of Microbiology School of Life Sciences in India said that the photographs are interesting, saying the following. There are no geological or other forces on Earth which can produce sedimentary structures, by the hundreds which have mushroom shapes. Stem stalks and shed what looks like spores on the surrounding surface. In fact, 15 specimens were photographed by NASA growing out of the ground in just 3 days. Although Dr. Edwin Kind, a planetary geoscientist at the University of Chicago, said the following. I don't know who reviewed the paper, but I would take away their license as a biologist, especially as a microbiologist. These features are well understood. They are abiotic features caused by saltation, abrasion, or wind erosion. Numerous examples have been inspected by rovers. They are not fungi, End quote. A National Research Council biologist also made some interesting comments about the photographs, saying the following, which is also depicted in before and after pictures of specimens photographed by NASA. Interestingly, some took this further and said that NASA need to be held accountable for not investigating these photographs. Going back in 2014, it was announced that NASA was being sued because they didn't investigate an alleged life form on the red planet. The original image showed what it looked like a Mars rock appearing in front of the Mars rover. And when people saw it, they claimed that it must have been proof of life on Mars. Mr. Joseph was one of the individuals behind the claim and said that NASA should be investigating what appears to be alien life on Mars, but said that it's odd that NASA refuses to look into what was captured by the Martian rover. Mr. Joseph said the following about the image. It's actually a mushroom-like fungus, a composite organism consisting of colonies of bacteria, and these can be found on Earth. I want to compel and order the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and its Chief Administrator, Charles Bolden, to perform a public scientific and statutory duty, which is to closely photograph and thoroughly scientifically examine and investigate a biological organism, which was identified and thus discovered and photographed on Mars by NASA's rover Opportunity in January 2014, and which NASA referred to in a press release as unlike anything we've seen before. We are totally confused. Although it sounds like an odd request, NASA themselves did say that the photograph was of interest. In fact, Steve Squires reported that the origin of the artifact is a mystery, that he and his team who further looked into it couldn't explain what it was and were baffled by its appearance. The team did say, though, that it's likely not a rock, but that it could be something like a meteorite. Another idea was that this could just be a rock that was flipped. Online users, though, don't buy into this idea and have asked NASA to conduct further research around the area to determine what the object is. As of right now, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration have said that these photographs don't show life, and that they have examined some of these alleged artifacts further and no life was present. Again, though, some have criticized the space agency and said that some of these discoveries have been left, and that they're only brought to light when amateur researchers happen to find them in NASA's Mars library. NASA officials have also said that people should only listen to them and their scientists when it comes to Mars discoveries, saying that they're the ones who know about what's going on in and around Mars, and that anyone telling you that there's life on Mars is wrong and that these claims are not backed up with scientific evidence. So what do you make of these interesting photographs? Do you think they show signs of life on Mars? Or are they just Mars rocks? NASA just revealed that it can't find the Mars rock sample that the Perseverance rover just found, saying that it mysteriously disappeared. NASA has sent various rovers to Mars in the hopes of better understanding the Martian surface. It's estimated that these missions go into the billions, but now they've said that they're collecting samples from the surface of Mars and hope to better understand its past. The Perseverance rover finally made this happen, but it didn't go to plan. The space agency announced that the river had picked a spot on an ancient lake bend, with researchers saying this was an ideal location because it could have harbored life in the past. But bizarrely, the sample vanished. The hole in the rock where the sample should have been wasn't there anymore, with NASA saying that it just disappeared. The bizarre announcement got people talking. NASA Associate Administrator Thomas DeBurchins said the following in a press release. While this is not the hole in one we'd hoped for, there is always risk when breaking new ground. I'm confident we have the right team working on this, and we will persevere towards a solution to ensure future success. People said that this statement didn't really reveal much, and that it sounds like the space agency are just as confused as everybody else. NASA did say that they want to get to the bottom of this mystery, and said that they've instructed the Perseverance rover to take close-up images of the borehole in order to understand what happened. Jennifer Trosper, the project manager for Perseverance, said the following: the initial thinking is that the empty tube is more likely a result of the rock target not reaching the way we expected, and less likely a hardware issue with the sampling and caching system. Over the next few days, the team will be spending more and more time analyzing the data and also acquiring some additional diagnostic data to support understanding the route course for the empty tube. NASA has said the main goal of the Perseverance rover is to gather samples. These can be studied on Mars by the rovers. although NASA did express interest in sending future rovers to the Red Planet in order to retrieve these samples and bring them back to Earth. Scientists are looking for signs of past life on Mars, saying that a good place to start looking is these ancient lake bends. The last theory presented by NASA is that the rock that Perseverance was meant to collect may have just crumbled, with the space agency saying that this idea has been backed by others. Again, though, they said they will conduct further research in the area and hope that close-up images will reveal to them what happened. NASA said the following on their website: while the rover has significant autonomous capabilities, such as driving itself across the Martian landscape, hundreds of Earthbound scientists are still involved in analyzing results and planning further investigations. There are almost 500 people on the science team. The number of participants in any given action by the rover is on the order of 100. It's great to see these scientists come to agreement in analyzing the clues, prioritizing each step, and putting together the pieces of the Gorizzo science puzzle. This isn't the only interesting announcement that's been made by NASA. Last month, they reported that ancient life may have been scrubbed from parts of Mars. The study was conducted by the Curiosity rover, with the space agency saying that it made the discovery while it was investigating rocks in the Gale crater. As NASA reported, the Gale crater has been the home of the Curiosity rover, saying that it landed there back in 2012, and since then it's traveled across the crater in order to find signs of life. This area is a good place to look because it's made up of clay, and this is a good indicator because it's suspected that at one point in time, this area would have had water running through it. NASA also said it's a good place for there to be evidence of microbial fossils. Oddly enough, though, when the Curiosity rover took some samples from this crater, a dried-out lake bed revealed that certain areas contained more minerals than others, even though these samples had been taken virtually next to each other. Tom Bristow, a researcher at NASA, said the following about the discovery. "We used to think that once these layers of clay minerals formed at the bottom of the Lake Gale crater, they stayed that way, preserving the moment in time they formed for billions of years. But later brines broke down these clay minerals in some places, essentially resetting the rock record." Study co-author John Grzinga continued with the following. "These are excellent places to look for evidence of ancient life. Even though diagnosis may erase the signs of life in the original lake, it creates the chemical gradients necessary to support subsurface life. So we are really excited to have discovered this." Ashwin Vaishnath, a Curiosity Project scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, had this to say: "We've learned something very important. There are some parts of the Martian rock record that aren't so good at preserving evidence of the planet's past. The fortunate thing is we find both close together in Gale crater and can use mineralogy to tell which is which. A lot of evidence and research points to the existence of water on Mars, such as the findings of the European Mars Express. This craft, using an advanced radar system known as MARS's, found that Mars's south pole holds a subsurface anomaly that strongly suggests an entire lake, thought to be around 20 kilometers across and at least 1 meter deep as underneath the pole. Very recent evidence has found that there are certain places on Mars which could hold liquid water. The reason ice water is plentiful on Mars, but currently there is no evidence of liquid water, is because Mars' atmosphere is incredibly thin. So as soon as any ice would melt, it would immediately turn to vapor. So what do you make of these recent announcements and discoveries? Also, what do you think happened to the sample that the Perseverance rover took? We live in a world where many things our predecessors did not know or were confused by have been explained by modern medicine, astronomy, and advanced science. And yet, the more answers we obtain, the less we truly know. Today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 extraordinary discoveries that leave us with more questions than answers. Glacier blood could be key to understanding the impacts of climate change. It's no secret that climate change is a serious dilemma. But as problematic as it is, there is a shocking amount about it that we do not understand. On the French Alps, at the top of the mountains, lies a phenomenon known as glacier blood. These crimson patches can stretch for miles and resemble a murder scene from a gruesome horror movie. that were discovered by scientists during their time spent searching the Alps for intriguing microbacteria and algae. This particular expedition was titled the Alp Alga Project and was created with studying mountain creatures in mind, specifically those inhabiting the Alps 1,000 to 3,000 meters above sea level. Microalgae exist in countless places on Earth, and they are a fundamental food source for various ecosystems from mountains to oceans and rivers. Eric Merkel, the director of the Institute for Cell and Plant Physiological Sciences, as well as the coordinator of the ALP-ALGA Consortium, has stated the severity of global warming and climate change is affecting the algae and the ecosystems for which they provide. Merkel explained that while the majority of people are aware of the existence of oceanic algae, they are unaware of their presence on the heights of mountaintops and in highlands, same as the sea, but in snow, ice, said Merkel, who saw the algae for himself back in 2019. Microalgal cells are incredibly tiny creatures that are only tenths of thousands of inches in size. That is the equivalent of thousands in a single millimeter. Microalgae can survive either as individuals or in large groups, otherwise known as colonies, and are known to feed off the sun using photosynthesis, a process used by plants and other forms of microscopic bacteria and organisms to collect energy from the sun. The algae collect the sunlight and produce sugar. In the words of Merkel, and whether algae grows in liquid waters or in compressed snow in the mountains, all ecosystems eat it directly and indirectly. The reason for the algae's crimson shading is due to a mixture of chlorophyll, a chemical that is required for photosynthesis, and carotenoid, which gives carrots their orange glow and other vegetables orange to red colors. The mix between the two compounds resulted in the algae inhibiting the French Alps turning a deep red. The algae here require carotenoid because it is a defense mechanism against the radioactivity found in the highlands caused by extreme ultraviolet rays. Despite the fact that the algae blood glacier is now a known phenomenon, scientists are still at a loss about the specifics of the algae's ecology, and they are conducting ongoing theories and experiments to see how climate change affects them. But there is a theory that suggests the more frequent the red snow, the more damage it can do to the surrounding environment. A study from 2016 claimed that the crimson snow melts at a faster rate than normal due to a lack of light reflectance, which led some researchers to believe that the algae are markers of climate change since they can showcase the rising levels of CO2 in the air with their growth. Unfortunately, we do not know for sure whether the increased amount of red snow is a direct result of global warming and climate change, but the probability is immense, and microbiologists are on a mission to research these algae until they reach a final conclusion. Earth has a 27.5 million year heartbeat, but we don't know what causes it. Mother Earth is a mysterious force to be reckoned with. As much as we love to honor ourselves as a great species, we have only existed for a tiny portion of the Earth's current lifespan. There is a reason why ancient pagan societies all over the classical world viewed our beloved planet as a maternal force of divinity. Provides for us, gives us food and resources we can use for our survival and leisure. Whereas in the past our ancestors revered the elements and the power they had over them in fear and fascination, we have taken a stance of control. We like to believe we are in power, but the earth, nature, and all chemicals and creatures have existed before we even evolved. Nature has a mind of its own, it does its own thing and cares little for humans. And as it turns out, the earth has a heartbeat and a pulse which has existed for about 260 million years. Currently, there is a lack of explanation as to why this is, but a research team from the University of New York has been carrying out the study with Michael Rapino, a geologist, as the team's leader. This heartbeat is not the kind we are accustomed to. Rather, it is a title given to recurring clusters of phenomena and events. Past mass extinctions have occurred simultaneously with the Earth's pulse. Generally, whenever there is one major catastrophe happening, it is followed by other minor disasters, volcanic eruptions, fluctuating sea levels, magma spewing from the Earth's crust, among other things. The study concluded that this heartbeat and pulse has repeated various times in a cycle during the past 260 million years, but there is no scientific reason as to why that is. By their cycle's existence, the knowledge that our planet, which provides for us, also harshly punishes us and takes away what she has given is frightful to be sure, But there is no need to worry at the moment, as the next predicted pulse is not supposed to occur for another 20 million years. In the last 260 million years, the dinosaurs roamed the Earth, became extinct, the original continent of Pangaea split into 7, and humans evolved into the civilizations we are today. And all through that time, natural disasters have hit harshly and cruelly, often all at once. Every 27.5 million years, the heartbeat repeats and disastrous consequences repeat in its wake. Rampino addressed the fact that many geologists believe these events are simply random by assuring them that their study found a continuous cycle which occurs, historically at the same time too concise to be random. These geologic events are correlated and not random, says Rampino. Hubble Space Telescope takes another look at weird galaxy that seems to lack dark matter. Dark matter is one of the most mysterious things in our universe. It is invisible but has immense gravitational effects. It is, however, supposed to be everywhere, hidden in plain sight. And yet, despite how it is meant to make up most of the universe, astronomers in 2018 reported sightings of a strange galaxy which seemed to entirely lack dark matter. The concept shocked astronomers and many thought it impossible, but the cosmos never fails to astound. The initial finding was met with much skepticism, but after the galaxy named DF2 was checked using the Hubble Space Telescope, the hypothesis was confirmed and further investigations are being planned. Most galaxies form spirals or ellipticals such as the Milky Way or M87. DF2, however, works in never-before-seen ways, with researchers saying that it goes against everything we know about how the cosmos is supposed to work. DF2's density levels are astoundingly low, and it is an ultra-diffused galaxy. In short, it has the mass of a tiny galaxy, but it is far wider than it should be. All that matter is spread out. For example, DF2 is the size of our own Milky Way, but it has less than half its overall percentage of stars and planets. The best explanation for how vastly diffused the galaxy is would be the lack of dark matter to fill in the cracks. It is important to note that astronomers are split in opinion over this discovery. Some argue that the data still is not conclusive enough to warrant any real consideration, and that the astronomy team miscalculated the distance of the galaxy, which accounts for the faulty recorded brightness. Fewer stars mean that less of DF2's gravity could be accounted for by invisible matter, and therefore dark matter would surely atone for the remainder of the gravity, but such claims were disproven with the second analysis of DF2. Dark matter itself is a subject of intrigue, with various theories as to what it is made of. Scientists believe that dark matter is made of axions, a particle that has not been proven to exist, but it might be, or primordial remains of black holes. Either way, our knowledge of dark matter begins and ends at the simple fact that we know it is there. Peter van Dokkum, one of the researchers, stated about the discovery, "For almost every galaxy we look at, we say that we can't see most of the mass because it's dark matter. What you see is only the tip of the iceberg with Hubble. But in this case, what you see is what you get. Hubble really shows the entire thing. That's it. It's not just the tip of the iceberg. It's the whole iceberg. The new information proves that DF2 is further than initially believed, making dark matter even less likely to exist in the galaxy. Now, the argument of distance miscalculation, though still somewhat prominent, is very unlikely. The mystery will surely continue for years to come before we are graced with the truth. We are constantly reaching for new knowledge. It is within our very nature to comprehend, but we must deal with the potential that there are things beyond our understanding. But what do you make of these strange discoveries? Our world is rife with mysteries and enigmas. Through the years, a myriad of wondrous events have occurred and thousands of amazing discoveries have been made. We can never be quite sure what lies beyond the horizon. Between archaeological wonders and the rapid development of technology, there is an unbound potential for our future. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 recent discoveries. One of the oldest burial sites in the Amazon. Researchers believe they have stumbled across what may be the oldest burial site yet discovered in the southwest Amazonia, tucked away within northern Bolivia in the Llanos de Moxtos region of the Amazon rainforest. This site contains graves that are estimated to be a minimum of 6,000 years old and presumed to be older. Buried here are 5 humans, as well as the shells of snails and the bones of fish and various mammals. This discovery is more important, as they believe this site was created 6,000 years ago, which entirely changes the timeline of when we believe people had begun to build settlements within the Amazon. The site was found on the forest islands situated in Isle del Tesoro, La Chacra, and San Pablo. An excavation and further study led many researchers to believe that these so-called forest islands provided a safe asylum and a point of refuge to ancient Amazonians fleeing the flooded Llanos de Moxos savanna throughout the rainy season, making these islands seasonal settlements. This discovery has also given insights into the sophistication of these societies, as burials of this sort, along with the traces of food remains and of fires having burned, have implications of a settled society protecting their territories. Before this discovery, we had been operating under the assumption that the people living in this region were hunter-gatherers, though this updated perspective suggests a series of more complex societies instead. This means our timeline could have been 10,000 years out, meaning these groups and societies were established and complex far earlier than we originally thought. Lead author of the study, Jose M. Capri, assistant professor at Penn State University, explained that these burials tells us that the indigenous groups within the Amazon had learned to adapt and transform the landscape in beneficial and suitable ways. These signify far more advanced living standards than we had predicted were possible at this time. Furthermore, the discarding of waste, be it food or what was once living, and then returning to stay in the area as a seasonal settlement, meant that the soil composition had been changed slightly, becoming more fertile. This allowed for thicker growth of vegetation and higher land elevation. Jose M. Capri elaborates, explaining that when their preferred food sources and supplies ran low, the indigenous populations were able to domesticate plants, including peanuts and sweet potatoes. This excelling knowledge meant that only mere generations later, societies capable of establishing roads were prevalent. Capri concludes his research, explaining that the study of these landscapes helps us to see the interaction between humans and these biomes, and gives us an insight into the cultural and biological diversity that is rife within them. Microplastics found for the first time in Antarctic ice. Although some might believe that the glaciers of the Antarctic are relatively untouched by humans, this is becoming further and further from the truth. Not only are the glaciers and ice sheets melting and diminishing at a rapid rate, but scientists have recently discovered tiny pieces of plastic called microplastics in deep ice. The unhappy discovery made by a United States-led team of scientists was described as a punch in the gut, as it details how truly deep and pervasive the pollution of the Earth has become, when even the most remote waters on the planet are impacted. As with pollution and contaminants anywhere, the ecosystems and underwater life will undoubtedly be negatively impacted by the presence of microplastics, and this impact might even be felt by those of us incredibly distant from the freezing tundra of the Antarctic. The discovery of the contamination was made by a team of researchers who described the feeling of finding evidence of human damage in such a remote location by saying, "We had spent weeks looking out at what looked so much like pristine white sea ice floating out on the ocean. When we looked at it up close and we see that it's all very, very visibly contaminated when you look at it with the right tools, it felt a little bit like a punch in the gut." The research team took 18 samples from various depths up to 2 meters at several locations, and in some instances, the plastic contamination wasn't microscopic at all. It was visible throughout the samples. The samples appeared to be at least a year old, and it was theorized that it was blown from far-off oceans, where plastic pollution is much more widespread and carried through the atmosphere until it was dumped onto the Antarctic during snowfalls. If this hypothesis is correct, the spread of microplastics is not limited to just the locations where polluted ocean waters can reach, but it can, in fact, turn up anywhere on the Earth. The fact that such small pieces of plastic can be transported through the air without notice raises the question of whether or not we are inhaling microplastics as well, and the effect this will have on humans as well as plants, animals, and sea life. The effects that humans have had on the planet is evident even in the farthest reaches of Earth. But as we learn and discover more and more about that frozen expanse, we are also continuously uncovering beautiful and amazing things about that seemingly impenetrable landscape. The underwater Stonehenge found underneath Lake Michigan. When most people think of Stonehenge, the familiar prehistoric monument of a ring of standing stones in Wiltshire, England comes to mind. These massive stones have been standing on the surface since 3000 BC, but another recent discovery uncovers a similar structure deep below underwater and far away from England. In 2007, while on the search for shipwrecks, a group of northwestern Michigan college archaeologists came across something big. 12 meters down, they found a set of aligned stones that must have been placed into formation by ancient humans before water covered the area more than 10,000 years ago. They were looking at America's Stonehenge. It was found in the depths of Lake Michigan, which is the largest freshwater lake in the United States. When Mark Hawley, professor of underwater archaeology, came across the site, he stated he couldn't believe what he saw. It was the position of the stones that led researchers to believe it was unlikely that the formation was naturally occurring. The stones were all the same distance across and were like the ones found in France, England, and the Nabta Player. To get a closer look, a diving expedition was put together to observe the stones. An underwater photographer was able to capture a fascinating find of a mastodon depiction carved upon a stone. Mastodons were ancient animals that resembled modern elephants and were forest-dwelling creatures that lived in herds and grazed across the land. They disappeared from North America when a mass extinction occurred around 8000 BC, done in part by hunter overexploitation. The carving on the stone suggests that the American Stonehenge had to have been arranged before the mastodons went extinct over 10,000 years ago. Researchers believe that the material consists of a very hard rock called granite. The lines and marks of the mastodon were precisely carved, which raised the question of how ancient humans found material strong enough to etch onto granite. Among these speculations, there was further evidence that the structure was man-made. Humans were believed to have been present as early as 25,000 years ago, when the lake was once dry land. Around the area when the first Europeans arrived in 17th century, they came across thousands of prehistoric mounds. Sacred stones, statues, and stone idols have also been sighted in several places, many weighing over 100 kilograms. To this day, the exact coordinates of America's Stonehenge is kept a secret by the local Indian tribes who want to keep an influx of tourists away from their land. There is only one question that remains. How could humans have created such intricate structures over 10,000 years ago? The answer to this mystery may very well change history as we know it. Our world is an incredible mix of impossible-to-explain phenomenon and overwhelming information that's left many puzzled as to the nature of strange things from around the world. To bring these mysterious phenomena to light and provide them with an understandable explanation, scientists and researchers have conducted a variety of tests. Although they've done a great job at helping us understand certain discoveries and anomalies, there's some that still remain a mystery. One place that's of particular interest is that of Antarctica, with the frozen wasteland hiding many artifacts that are just waiting to be discovered. The most recent discovery to come from Antarctica was found by someone using Google Earth. A number of different photographs were posted to social media showing something sticking out to the ground in Antarctica, with those who saw the images saying that it looked like a giant pyramid was peeking out of the snow. And this caused some to say that this artifact could be visible due to the melting ice. One of the users who stated they found the image first said they were looking through Antarctica and could see something that appeared to be higher than the surrounding area. They said that they then clicked on the 3D version of Google Earth and could see the structure much more easily, saying that the first thing that came to mind when they saw it was that of a pyramid. Others who saw the images said the structure does look like an ancient pyramid and even compared the overall look to that of the Mesoamerican pyramids. Those who believe that these are pyramids give different ideas for who is behind them. There's some that believe that ancient man traveled to Antarctica 1,000 of years ago and started building large structures, the same as what can be seen in other ancient civilizations. While there's another group of people that believe that Antarctica may have been inhabited by an advanced civilization, noting that books and ancient writings talk about humanoids much more advanced than modern man, and they've said that this civilization could have lived in Antarctica. One user said the following about the image: "This is just the most recent photograph to emerge. There's many that are like this, and it seemed to depict large structures. I understand that scientists have a certain way of thinking and like to push their views. You'd think that curiosity would get the better of them and that they want to investigate what these things are. To me, it seems interesting that we have large structures sticking out of Antarctica, yet most academics don't seem interested in them. Well, this user said the following: time and time again we've been wrong about Antarctica, and each time the sciences change. For example, years back scientists said that Antarctica was not of interest and that there's nothing there. But now we know that it holds complex life forms in underground lightnings. Early asteroids have been found there. A huge anomaly is located under Wilkes Land. An ancient jungle once existed here, and also the land was once inhabited by dinosaurs, and this was backed up by the recent dinosaur fossils that were discovered. End quote. It's for this reason that some have said scientists and researchers should be more open-minded about these kinds of discoveries, saying that humans could have spread to the continent of Antarctica and started building here. Skeptics, though, are not won over by these types of photographs and have said they can be easily explained when you look at the surroundings of these images, saying that when UFOs are allegedly found in Antarctica, look around the area and you will normally find mountains nearby. And what's likely happened is a piece of ice has fallen off this mountain and has left a mark in the snow, and this is what people are claiming is a UFO. They also apply the same to these structures, saying that they're not pyramids but rather rocks that have become visible due to the melting ice. They say that we've never found anything of interest, and all of these photographs can be easily explained. Believers, though, have said this isn't the case and that many of these strange objects can be found scattered throughout Antarctica. One believer said the following about their skeptics: it's interesting that skeptics have the same mindset as hardcore theorists. A hardcore theorist believes in everything and skeptics believe in nothing. They're pretty much the mirror version of each other. I think it's healthy to keep an open mind about these kinds of discoveries, but I think we should also look at other possibilities. Could be a pyramid, or it could just be an area that's being revealed by the melting ice. This photograph is one of the most interesting ones that I've seen, and I think it could show a large pyramid, end quote. To show how unpredictable the area is, scientists were surprised when they found hot flows of volcanic magma underneath Antarctica. Nestled on a remote bit of land in the South Samish Islands, researchers confirmed suspicions of a lava lake by taking high-quality imagery, and this was of a known active volcano in the area. Scientists believe that the massive lava lake has a diameter somewhere between 90 and 215 meters, with a pool of lava reaching heats of 1,000 degrees Celsius. Lava lakes are giant pools of molten lava built up in craters, volcanic vents, or other geological spaces. And while we might imagine volcanoes being the perfect place for a big pool of lava, long-lasting lava lakes are not a common occurrence, and to find one in such an isolated part of the world is an incredible feat. So what do you make of these mysterious photographs? Do you think they show ancient pyramids, or is it just a case of pareidolia? These photographs are currently being shared around social media. The image shows what many are saying is a Bigfoot. Jacksonville, Florida's Facebook page posted the following statement: the sheriff's department just validated the photos and the Finding Bigfoot team has been deployed. I will update as information comes in. A Florida man is happy to be safe at home after a scary incident. John Doe spotted a Bigfoot in the woods on the water's edge and took these amazing photographs of the beast. He said the following: at first I thought it was a grizzly bear, but once I got a better look I realized that it was definitely a Sasquatch. The sheriff's department is currently examining these photographs, but they are expected to verify their authenticity soon. This is a developing story, more to come. When the photographs were shared online, many said they are some of the best that have been shared in recent years, noting that this could be the real deal. Many people then shared their own experience with Bigfoot, with some users saying that these creatures can be found all across the United States, while others said that this isn't actually a Bigfoot but rather the skunk ape, another large bipedal creature that's said to live in the U.S. For years now, residents across America have reported encountering these mysterious creatures, saying that they are notoriously difficult to photograph and that you don't usually run into them because they keep their distance, saying that they can sense you from a mile off and will be gone before you can reach them. But every so often someone is able to capture some interesting images of these creatures, leaving us to question whether they're real or not. Those that have allegedly encountered them have said they are genuine and that there's a small population of them spread throughout America. One user said the following: "These photographs are really interesting and they remind me of the stories that my dad shared with me." He said that in all of his years of hunting he only encountered 2 Bigfoots, saying that they are incredibly shy and don't often approach humans. One time he told me that he saw a large figure hiding behind a large stack of trees. He said that when he was around 50 meters from it, he suddenly realized that it wasn't a human but was actually a large Bigfoot. He didn't approach any further and backed off immediately. He said it was strange because at one point all of the wildlife in the area went silent, and he thinks this is because of the Bigfoot. To this day, he swears by what he saw and is a firm believer that Bigfoot is out there. Another user had this to say: "I'm on the fence with Bigfoot. I really want to believe that is real. I've heard some interesting stories about them which have come from credible sources. I've also heard some out there theories as to why we can never find them, some of which link them to the UFO phenomena. I hope these photographs are real. I really want to believe." While some skeptics in the comments section weren't buying the photographs, saying the following: "I don't think this is a big event. To me, it just looks like a man in a suit, possibly a hunter wearing some kind of camouflage. The photographs are quite clear, which makes me think that the person in question wasn't too far away, and the original photographer didn't want to get too close. Otherwise, it would have been obvious that it was someone in camouflage. There's no way that a Bigfoot creature exists. We would have found evidence of it by now. And if their size is in fact true, then you would need a large population of them to exist. We've never found any genuine footprints or skeletons of this creature. It's not real," end quote. Those who have researched Bigfoot sightings have said there's some things that you should look out for, noting that one of the signs of a Bigfoot is that of broken branches. Bigfoot researchers have said that you can often hear them breaking branches if you're alone, and that if you follow the sound you won't normally find a Bigfoot, as they'll be gone before you can reach the area, but you might find some of the snap branches. They've said that they're unsure as to why they do this, but said it could be them creating dents, or they could do this to communicate with one another. Bigfoot sightings and encounters aren't anything new. Reports of these elusive creatures have been reported for 100 years now, and there's some that think these could be animals that are unknown to science. It's important to remember that the mountain gorilla was only discovered in 1902. It's for this reason that some Bigfoot researchers have theorized that as a large ape that roams the Americas and that is able to avoid humans. After all, there's countless stories of ancient humans having run-ins with large bipedal ape-like creatures. These reports have come in from America, Australia, and Asia. In fact, early mountain climbers would report seeing large hairy men high up in the mountains, claiming that they told above them and were the gatekeepers of the mountains. As of right now, those scientists have said there's no such creature, and that the reports that are coming in can be easily explained with them, noting that the majority of these sightings are either pareidolia or someone misidentifying another human as a Bigfoot. Some trained hikers and officials disagree with these statements and have said that there's various hotspots throughout the United States where these creatures live, with national parks allegedly being a hotspot for these cryptids. Many have come forward and said that while hiking it feels as if lone high-pitched sounds are following them. Some believe that there could be creatures lurking in our national parks that are causing disappearances. So what do you make of these Bigfoot photographs? These recent discoveries will shock and amaze you. We learn that dogs are truly man's best friend, the history of our long-forgotten ancestors, and what just might be the world's first military burial. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 recent discoveries and the facts behind the story. Hiker's dog keeps him alive in the Alps for 7 nights. When a 33-year-old man broke his ankle while hiking through the Italian Alps and was stranded in the freezing cold for 7 nights, he thought the end of days was near. If not for his little 4.5-kilogram rescue dog called Ash, the Alps may have been his last resting place. The unnamed hiker traveled from the northeastern city of Trieste to begin a trek through the Alps that he does every year. The beginning of his journey was going beautifully. He had begun by spending a few days and nights in various mountain huts and makeshift shelters, traveling through the gorgeous landscape with his trusty dog by his side. Everything changed when he slipped and fell, breaking his ankle on impact. He was in the middle of the Wenzinaza Valley, an area that is entirely unreachable by mobile phone. He was stranded, unable to walk. He managed to drag himself to a nearby stream to get some life-saving water. his miniature mixed-breed dog never leaving his side. The dog huddled against him for warmth and kept him sane through the brutally cold nights. The hiker told authorities that his dog had been his saving grace, keeping him alive and alert while he laid on the icy ground without much food or water. Together they survived 7 painstaking nights in the freezing Italian Alps, relying only on each other for support. After 4 days had passed and the man had not returned home as expected, his girlfriend alerted the Friuli Mountain and Cave Rescue Services. Rescuers dispatched to the area and began searching by air in a helicopter. It took the team 3 full days of searching before they were able to locate him and his dog. On the last day of their search, they spotted the hiker lying on the ground near a stream in the mountains north of Udine, northeastern Italy. The man was reported to be conscious when the rescuers arrived, covered in leaves with his foil blanket nearby. He is expected to make a full recovery, but he has suffered serious injuries. Someone attacked a cave bear with a spear 35,000 years ago. As we sit in our air-conditioned houses, ordering 4-course meals from our phones with the click of a button, it is nearly impossible to imagine our ancestors attacking massive bears with nothing but a spear. Yet that is exactly what happened 35,000 years ago. And now we have proof. Throughout the most recent ice age, more than 100 cave bears passed away in Imene Cave, a 100-meter-long corridor of stone in Russia's southern Ural Mountains. The remains of these past bears, along with an enormous cave lion and a few other Pleistocene mammals, left behind nearly 10,000 bones as evidence of their existence. This phenomenon puzzled historians and archaeologists alike. No one could answer the question, why would hundreds of bears die in this one cave? Most of the cave bear bones show no signs of violence, butchering, or gnawing. This rules out the possibility that the bears were harmed outside of the cave and were brought there simply for a feast. They seem to have lost their lives to natural causes, with researchers suggesting they may have passed on due to the cold, starvation, or illness. It seemed to be that massive groups of these bears would travel together into these caves, knowing that their end of life was near. The most prominent theory was that the bears were attempting to seek refuge in the caves from the brutal cold during the Ice Age and were attempting to hibernate through the worst of the cold. Unfortunately, many if not all of the bears would pass away from the harsh winter. However, this theory was challenged when Dmitry Jimirnov of the Ural branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences began clearing one of the cave bear skulls from Imene. That is when the archaeologist noticed a rather suspicious hole in the parietal bone. Near the back of the skull, the lower edge of the hole displayed a slight curve with a flattened base. The upper edge was jagged and widened sharply towards the middle. The shape bore a striking similarity to the stone spearheads discovered nearby, and it was deduced to be from the same period of the bear's fated end. Matching the section and size of the points and the hole on the bear's skull allows us to assume that the beast was hit with such a weapon, wrote Gimrin and his colleagues. Most likely the spike was used as a spearhead. They published their work in the Russian journal. It was deduced by the markings left on the surrounding bone that the bear suffered a powerful blow. The spearhead pierced the bear's skull on its first attempt and most likely immediately slayed the bear. The walls of the hole are chipped visible on the surface, numerous flat facets directed from the hole along the surface of the bone as well as through cracks going in the same direction, wrote Jimirnov and his colleagues. This may have been a common fate for the cave bears. Many of the bones recovered from this ancient time were worn down and hardly recognizable. Only a minority of the bones discovered were preserved properly to make any scientific assumptions. Archaeologists have found the bones of about 24 large cave bears with the tail, cut, and scrape marks of flesh removal, and one even has the tip of a stone projectile still lodged in its vertebrae. Caves attracted not only animals but also humans, wrote Jimirnov and his colleagues. Finding the bones of cave bears and artifacts together is quite common. At Imene Cave, not only were stone tools found that aligned with historical accounts of Mousterian culture, but there were also bits of charcoal and ochre commonly used to make fires during this period. These findings are not outliers. Many cave sites across Eurasia, two even stretching as far out to France, human remains have been found in bear nests. In some cases, humans and bears appeared to take turns in using the caves, with human footprints closely overlapping bear tracks and vice versa. This discovery is nothing short of amazing. There are many theories as to why this ancient man decided to pick a fight with a cave bear. It is completely plausible that someone wandered into a cave, maybe looking for shelter, and stumbled across a nest of hibernating bears, wounding one in a spontaneous fit of panic. It has also been theorized that bears may have been sacrificed as part of a ritual or possibly a religious ceremony. However, the true events leading up to the attack will always remain a mystery. Archaeologists propose 4,500-year-old burial mound was world's first military memorial. Many people understand that mummification was widespread in ancient Egypt. However, few people realize that this may have been a common practice all over the globe. Roughly 4,500 years ago, Mesopotamians living in present-day Syria greatly valued the ritual of honoring and preserving their people that have passed over. They upheld a highly respected monument that consisted of a rippled white dome that entombed the people that had passed over. Over countless generations, residents would climb on top of the monument to honor their deceased. According to ancient scriptures, community members would pour drinks and place valuable offerings over graves within the structure. This tradition withstood the test of time until 2450 BC when someone decided to remodel and repurpose the sacred monument. This unprecedented renovation covered the structure with earthen terraces, transforming the dome into a 6-story stepped pyramid or ziggurat. Each new addition to space was filled with assortments of human bones, skins from animals, and 2-inch-long clay bullets, theorized to be formerly used for arming slingshot-like weapons. Originally, it was assumed that the human remains stuffed into the steps of the monument were those of whom were considered less than worthy of a proper burial. However, recent scientific discoveries have concluded that these individuals were deemed to be valuable members of the community. The skeletons that packed the steps of the pyramid seemed to be exhumed from their previous graves and reburied into the formation of the pyramid. This move took a great deal of time and attentive care to properly transport the bodies without extensive damage. It has been deduced that the bodies who were transplanted were fallen soldiers, which would make the site the world's first military monument. The revered site, now commonly known as the White Monument, not only provides evidence for various rituals and beliefs surrounding the dead at the time, but also provides insight into the military power of ancient Syria. With the preserved bodies of fallen soldiers along with their weaponry, it can be assumed that various communities upheld cohesive armies capable of full-scale tactical combat by the 3rd millennium BC in the early Bronze Age. There are many tombs across the world that suggest the use of the military as weapons and other materials relating to battles have been discovered. However, the White Monument held the key to this answer as it contained partial skeletons of men capable of battle, buried with the ammo or animals specifically utilized in conflict. Furthermore, the sheer number of unearthed bodies from the historical site point to the fact that the region had an official army of substantial proportions. The possibility of standing armies that are so controlled and centralized you are even able to make a monument. There's nothing else like this, says Stephanie Solova, an archaeologist at the University of Washington. The monument would have likely served the community for many purposes. Not only would it reinforce the importance of soldiers, encouraging residents to value their military in high regard, but it would be a warning to outsiders as well. Burying these people in the sort of function that they would have had in the military is a statement of power at that point. Both locally and externally, because this thing was really visible for miles, says University of Toronto archaeologist and Porter, lead author of the Antiquity Study. The true purpose of the monument and what it stood for remain a mystery, but one thing is certain. The White Monument holds secrets of the past that we will never fully understand. But what do you make of these 3 interesting discoveries?